Thank you. Beitza. Gimel Vav.
Gimel
They
Zayin.
may not, Zion, good design. Gimel Zion. One may not wet a knife on Yom Tov, but one may pass it over another. One may not say to a butcher, weigh a dinner's worth of meat, but he may slaughter and they divide among themselves. A person may say to his fellow, fill this utensil for me, but not by measure. Rabbi Yehuda says if it was a measuring utensil, he may not fill it. It occurred with Rabbi Shul ben Banit that he would fill his measures before Yom Tov and give them to his clients on Yom Tov. Rabbi Shul says even on the Moed he does so because of the cleanliness of the measures, clearness of the measures. But the sages say even on a weekday he does so because of the exactness of the measures. A person may
Just
go.
hold on a second. Hold on a second. Oh, yes, I beg your pardon. Yes, sorry, I lost my place. Yeah, okay, carry on.
A person may go to a storekeeper with whom he is familiar and say to him, give me eggs and nuts by number, for it is customary for the household to count in his house. And one who takes wine jars from place to place may not bring them in a basket or a hamper, but he takes them on his shoulder or in front of him. So too, one who transports straw may not hang the hamper behind him, but brings it in his hand. And one may bring in a straw pile, but not in a muksa. It's interesting because here it says he can transport them on his shoulder, but before, the few Mishnahs before, you couldn't do that because then it looks like you're going to work.
Um, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying over here. Is that if you're carrying it in the normal way in bulk, that looks like going to work. But if you take it in small quantities in your arms, that's okay.
Right. All right.
All right. Mishnah base. Ein notlim eitzin min hasukkah ela min hasamuchla. So this is not dafka a sukkah from sukkahs. It could be any kind of hut that's that was built, and the guy decided, listen, I don't really need this hut so much. It's a temporary structure anyway, but I do want some firewood, so let me take those. And the fact is that they were not designated for firewood beforehand, and therefore you cannot take them.
So I think
Ela,
I think I went to the wrong place. I did. You should be in Dallas base.
that's right.
I don't know why. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so
I'm
you
sorry.
can't, so you can't, and not lim eitzim and a sukkah. You cannot take wooden planks from the sukkah for firewood.
Right.
Ella min samuchla, but you can take from the things that are put up next to the walls that aren't actually from the body of the sukkah,
Okay.
and are not actually part of the wall. They're just some sort of a support. Okay. Maybe eitzim min hasadeh min mechunas. If you have wood that's lying out in the field that has been gathered together in piles, then that is mistama assumed to be gathered for firewood, and that's fine. Umina karpef from the wood pile. The karpef is an area just outside the city, where people put wood. Afilu mina mefuzar, even if it's scattered. Ezehu karpef. So what is the definition of a karpef? Kol samuch la'ir, something that's close to the city. Right. So in other words, it's within 70 amas of the last house. That's called the karpef. So says Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Omer kol shenichnasin lo beposachas vafilu besoch tzuchum Shabbos. Anything that is actually guarded by a key. So it's not just lying around Hefker. It's actually it's guarded by some kind of a protection of a lock or something. And even if it's not within the 70 amas, but is at least within the Tchum Shabbos. And the Tchum Shabbos goes for another 2,000 amas outside the city, as long as it's protected, and therefore it's considered as if it was set aside there for use on Yom Tov. Okay. Gimel, ein mevak in eitzim. You may not chop the wood. Okay, so in other words, not with an axe, not in the normal way, as we'll see in a minute. Lo min koros, and you cannot take old beams from a house and chop them into firewood. V'lo min hakora shenishbara b'Yom Tov, and also not from a beam that got broken on Yom Tov, and you said, okay, well, I can't use it anymore. Let me at least use it for firewood, because it was not designated as such when Yom Tov came in, and therefore it remains muktzeh as part of the building. Ve'ein mevakin lo bekordom v'lo b'megera v'lo b'magal ele b'kopitz. And you cannot and you cannot chop firewood. So let's say you have a block that already was designated for firewood, but it's too big to put on the fire now, and you want to chop it. You're not allowed to use an axe. Not a megera is a saw, and magal is a sickle.
Right.
Ela bekofitz, what you have to use is a chopping knife, or something which is not normally used for the job. Um, uh, so by doing it with a shinoi, you're showing that this is not like your normal weekday activity. Bayis shehu male peros. Now, what happens if you've got a little storehouse that's full of produce and it's closed up so that you couldn't, so it's all nailed shut so that you wouldn't be able to get in normally, and then part of it got broken. So now says the Tanakama, not tell me makom ha. So says the Tanakama, so where it got broken, you can stick your hand in and start taking produce out over there. But according to him, you would not be allowed to break open the structure in order to get the food out. Rabbi Meir Omer af poches lechatchila v'notel. He says it's like, you know, you're opening a bag of food, right? We say you're allowed to open a bag of food on Shabbos even though you're tearing because you want to get out. He says the same thing with the storehouse. If you want to get into it because you need to get food, you can break open the storehouse. But the halacha does not follow Rabbi Meir over here.
Mm.
Okay. Daled ein poschin es haner mipnei shehu ose kli. So what is the situation here? The potter makes to make this kli, he makes it like a ball of clay, a sort of a hollow ball of clay, and then cuts it in half to make two kalim. Okay, so now that you're not allowed to open up on Yom Tov because that is finishing off a kli. So that is not something that you got a heter for on Yom Tov. It's tikkun kli. Ve'en osin pechamin be Yom Tov. And you cannot make charcoal on Yom Tov. In other words, if you put coals on the side so that they should um, pechamim. So put them aside to use like the goldsmiths use. It says kahati. Um, so they are considered chashuv when you put these coals, you push these coals aside and mix them. Wait, this isn't stimming nicely. Just a sec. Let me take a quick look at the
This
in.
woman, I cut a wick into two because
No, no, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Um, One may not make charcoal on Yom Tov by placing burning coal aside so as to form charcoal, which is used by goldsmiths. So the charcoal is considered a utensil. So you can burn
right,
it. You're allowed to burn it, but pushing them aside is considered making little coals, which is useful
right.
to the goldsmiths. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, "Ve'en choschin es hapasila l'shnayim," and you cannot cut a wick in half. Okay, because now you've got two wicks, and so that is now a productive act. Rabbi Yehuda, however, has a good eitzah. He says, "Chotzcha ba'ur l'shtei neiros." So what do? Is you take the wick and you get two kalim each full of oil, and you put the two ends of the wick in the two bowls, and then you light the wick in the middle
Mhm.
so that it naturally burns and separates into two wicks, and now you've got two wicks, and that he says is legitimate, and that seems to be perfectly good halacha.
Yeah.
Okay, we're done there.
Okay. Beitza, Aleph, Vav.
Yeah,
Okay. This is you, right?
no, it's you.
Oh, right. All right. Beis Hamai says one does not take challah or dues to the Kohen on Yom Tov, whether they were apart on the day before or were set apart on that day. But Beis Hillel permits. Beis Shammai said, by Shammai gave them Gezer Sheva. Challah and dues are gifts to the Kohen, and Truma are as a gift to the Kohen. Just as one does not take from the Truma, so does not one take the dues. Beis Hillel said to them, "No, if you prefer to Truma, which may be not set apart, you will say the same for dues that is allowed to set apart." Beis Shammai says spices are ground with a wooden pestle and salt in a jar and a wooden stirrer. And Beis Hillel says spices are ground as usual with a stone pestle and salt with a wooden pestle. One who picks out pulse on Yom Tov, Beis Shammai says he picks out the edible parts and eats. The Beis Hillel says he picks them as usual into his lap, into a basket, into a dish, but not on a board or a sifter or a sieve. and he may rinse and skim. Okay.
Okay.
Yoma. Yoma. Okay. Dalit. $1. Every day he would scoop up the coal with a silver shovel and empty it into one of gold. But today he would scoop with a gold shovel and in it he would bring in the coals. Every day he would scoop with a 4 cob shovel and empty the contents into one of 3 cobs. But today he would scoop with one of 3 cobs and in it he would bring in the coals. The Yoshi says every day he would scoop with a 1 seal shovel and empty it into a 3 cob shovel. But today he would scoop with a 3 cob shovel and then he would bring it with the coals. Every day it was heavy, but today it was light. Every day its handle was short, but today it was long. Every day its gold was yellow, but today it was red. These are the words of Menachem. Every day he offered a half a mana of incense in the morning and a half mana in the afternoon. But today he added his 2 cup handfuls, and every day it was fine, but today was the finest of the fine. Every day the Kohanim would go up to the top of the altar and along the east side of the ramp and go down along the west. But today the Kohen goes up in the middle and descends in the middle. Yehuda says the Kohen Gadol also ascends and descends in the middle. Every day the Kohen Gadol would wash his hands and feet from the laver, and today from the golden pitcher. The Yehuda says the Kohen Gadol would always wash his hands and feet from the golden pitcher. Okay.
There's also Vav.
Right. Every day there were 4 pyres, but today there were 5. These are the words of Meah. Rabbi Yossi says every day there were 3, but today there were 4. Rabbi Yehuda says every day there were 2, but today 3. Okay. Okay. So in those times, Jews didn't agree either.
You're kidding. I can't believe it.
Okay. Um, uh, Kaf Daled base. We may untie bundles of straw before an animal when we scatter tender cedar bows, but we may not triply bound bundles of straw. We may not shred either fodder or carrots for an animal, whether it is lightweight or heavyweight, and Rebbe Yehuda permits crushing carrots for a lightweight animal. We may neither stuff a camel nor cram it, but we may put stuff into his mouth, food stuff into his mouth. We may not fatten calves, but we may put food into their mouths. We may put food into the mouths of fowls, and we may put water into bran, but we may not need it. We may not place water before bees or water before doves that are in the dovecote, but we may place water before geese and chickens and before Herodian doves. We may cut up gourds before cattle or a carcass before dogs. Rabbi Yehuda says if it was not yet a carcass prior to the Sabbath, it is prohibited because it is not something that was prepared. Okay. And there we go. Okay, Peah. Daled Zion. Peah was given right? Aleph, my eyes. Peah was given while attached to the soil in the case of suspended vines and palm trees. The household that takes down is the recipients of the poor. Reb Shimon says so too in the case of smooth nut trees. Even if 99 satyrs distributed and one says to snatch, this one they heed, for he spoke according to the law. In the case in the case of suspended vines and palm trees, it is not so. Even if 99 say to snatch and one says to strip it, this one they heed, for he spoke according to the law. If a person took part of the payah and cast it on the rest, he has nothing of it. If he fell upon it, or put his cloak over it, they remove it from him. The same applies to gleanings and to forgotten sheep. Okay, and that's payah. Now, okay. Aleph Gimel. In what case are these words said? Which obligatory bird pairs with obligatory pairs of birds offerings and voluntary bird offerings which mingle together, but with obligatory pairs of bird offerings which mingle with each other, 1 pair for this woman, 1 pair for that one, 1 pair for 2 pairs for this woman and 2 pairs for that one, or 3 pairs for this woman and 3 pairs for that woman. Half of the mingled birds are valid to be offered, and half of the birds are invalid to be offered. If, however, there was 1 pair of obligatory bird offerings for this woman and 2 for such pairs for that woman, or 3 such pairs for that one, and 10 such pairs for that woman, or 100 such pairs for that woman, the amount of birds of the smallest group is valid. Valid to be offered, whether they are brought for the same obligation, or whether they are brought for 2 different obligations, whether they are brought from 1 woman, or whether they are brought from 2 different women. Okay. In what cases the group of offerings brought for the one type of obligation? If the first group of offerings were brought for one incident of a woman giving birth, and the other group of groups were also brought for incidents of giving birth, or if the first group of offerings were brought for one occurrence of ziva, and the other group of groups were brought for occurrence of ziva, these are the cases of both groups being brought for one type of obligation. And what is the case of two groups of offerings being brought for two different types of obligations? If one group was brought for a birth, the other was brought for an occurrence of ziva. What is the case of two groups of offerings being brought from two women? If the two groups of birds were brought to atone for this woman upon giving birth and to atone for that one upon giving birth, or if the two groups of birds were brought to atone for this woman for an occurrence of ziva and to atone for that one for an occurrence of ziva, they are cases of the groups belonging to both women being brought for one type of obligation. And what is the case of the groups of offerings for two women being brought for two different types of obligations? If one group of offerings were brought to atone for this woman upon giving birth, and the other group of offerings were brought to atone for the woman upon the occurrence of ziva, the Yossi says two women who were obligated to bring bird offerings who took their pairs of birds to their offerings mixed together without designating which particular birds would belong to which woman, or if they together gave the purchase money for the pairs of birds to the Kohen who sells these birds without designation, which money belongs to whom? The Kohen may offer whichever birds he wishes as a chatas and may offer whichever birds he wishes as an olah, whether they are brought forth in the same type of obligation or whether they are brought for two different types of obligations.
Hold up. Uh, okay, which Mishnah did you just finish? Because I think
Dollar,
huh?
dollar distance.
Okay, Dal.
Dollar.
Okay, so then you're fine. Then we do also do Aleph. Yes.
Undesignated pair from which one bird flew away to the open air of the world or flew among bird offerings which must be left to die. If one of them died, he must take a partner for the second bird. If it flew to among others which are fit for offering, it is unfit, and it renders unfit one bird, corresponding to itself for a bird which flies out of its pair, and to other pairs which is unfit, it renders one unfit bird to the corresponding of itself.
Okay.
And Baba Masira, Zion. If one leased a field from another for 10 cores of wheat per year and it was struck, it may pay him out of it. If it was wheat from Superior, he may not say to him, I will buy from the market, but he must give him out of it. If one leases a field from another to sow barley, he may not sow it with wheat. Wheat he may sow with barley. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel prohibits. Grain he may not sow with beans, and beans he may sow with grain. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel prohibits. Shemitah is counted, and if he leases from him for 7 years, for 700 zuz, the Shemitah year is not counted. One who is hired for the day collects his wages all night. One who is hired for the night collects all day. One who is hired for several hours collects all night and all day. One who's hired for a week, a month, a year, or a secretary, or if he departs by
Wait,
day.
wait. Did you skip? Did you skip a page? Because I don't think you.
Yes, I did. I
Yeah, I don't think you
skipped.
did. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
If one leases a field from another for a few years, he may not sow it with flax, and he has no right to the beams of the sycamore. If he leases from him for 7 years, the first year he may sow it with flax, and he has the right to the beams of sycamore.
Okay, that's it.
Uh,
That's it.
okay,
So tomorrow is Mishnah Yod.
okay.
Okay.
Have a kashrus question if you have time.